How to Win the Culture War by Cody Clarke. Warning. At the time I'm making this video, it's for people on the right, but many years from now it could be a video for people on the left. Times change, parties change, power flips, whatever. The point is that this video's wisdom is applicable no matter what. That's how you know it's actual wisdom. Assessment. Let's begin by assessing things as they currently are. The left controls culture. You know this because when you think artist, you tend to think liberal. There are plenty more indicators of the left controlling culture than that, but it is the most important one to focus on. They've won at the mere word artist. This does not need to be flipped. The culture war is not won by thinking artist and then thinking conservative. It is won by artist being a category unto itself, with its own unique characteristics associated with it, not ones imposed upon it from the political sphere. When we think artist, we should think artist. In a world like that, the needs of artists actually stand a chance of being met, instead of always being pushed aside for allegedly more important liberal political causes du jour. The culture war, then, must be won not through battle, but through a rescue mission. Artists must be rescued from their captors on the left and set free, not then placed under new captorship by the right. When the heroic knight saves the beautiful princess from the evil dragon, the princess doesn't then become the knight's slave. Rescue. In order to rescue artists, one must first help them realize that they even need rescuing. Though many artists may be unhappy with how things are in the world for them as artists, few would ever point to the left as a cause. They have been trained to point their finger of blame squarely at the right, and more specifically, at their own vague, distorted ideas of conservatives and capitalism. Because of this, many on the right default to being unsympathetic towards artists, figuring why bother stepping in to help them if they hate us. This is a mistake. Ceding art and culture to an entire political side has been and continues to be suicidal for the right. Art, which should be a neutral territory populated by people who are artists above all else, exists instead as a propaganda machine for the left, operating largely uncontested by the right, mostly just whined or shrugged about. Only in recent years has the right dipped a toe in the water of defending the needs of artists, due to the left getting so absurd in their PC policing that the right can't not say at least something. But way more can be done. In particular, the right must champion freedom and independence for artists, which artists desperately require and which the left refuses to properly provide, as for them to do so would mean releasing their captives and relinquishing priceless cultural power. In order to rescue artists, one must also understand artists, as those who best understand artists are those who stand the best chance of helping them, and more importantly, being allowed to help them. Unless you understand what artists are and why they do what they do, artists will shut you out, particularly if you belong to the side that they have been lied to about for so long. Understanding. It's important to understand that artists become artists in order to be artists. No one becomes an artist in order to become a political pawn. That happens unwittingly through conditioning. In that sense, the rescue mission is really a restoration of artistic spirit, which is at its core independent, unaffiliated, and in this world but not of it. Artists are birds, and the left has caged them under the guise of protecting them. A victory for the right would not be putting them in cages owned by the right. Artists deserve to be able to fly free. Artists, by default, mean no harm. Even the most extreme or offensive art is just art. It exists within the special realm of art. What that means is that, no matter how much hate may go into the creation of it, art can never literally be hate. It can only be about hate. Art is never literally something, no matter how much an artist may try. It can only ever be about something. A violent movie is not violence. It is about violence. A racist joke is not racism. It is about racism. Art is always one step removed from its subject matter, a window to it rather than it literally. This is a difficult concept for some to understand, but it's true. Sit with it for a while if need be, ruminate on it for weeks, but it's true. And when you understand it, you will understand artists better than most do, especially the modern left. When art does harm, it is often through its inappropriate use. Much like a stone bust can be picked up and used to smash someone's head, or songs can be played dangerously loud, imagery can be used to traumatize, for example. But it's not the bust's fault, the song's fault, the imagery's fault. The fault lies with those misusing the art in order to harm others. It is very rarely the artists themselves doing this. Often it's the delivery system that is to blame, which so few artists are in control of, as so few artists distribute their own work. Pornography being seen by children, as one classic example, is rarely the fault of the porn stars or the filmmakers themselves, but of porn sites being able to be accessed by children. We can argue forever about whether or not pornography is good or bad for society, but we can all agree that children should not have access to it. Coming down on the porn itself for that is unfair. You should attack those who provide your kids access to it, much like you should be angry at a particular liquor store for selling booze to your 10-year-old, not mad at liquor itself for existing. Harm is sadly sometimes done in the making of art. There have been films where animals are needlessly tortured or killed on screen, and more commonly, films where actors are mistreated behind the scenes. It is fine to take artists to task for this. No artist who is a decent human being would say that artists should be able to do whatever the hell they want, violate all sorts of rights, be a total psychopath. Those awful people give the good, decent majority of artists a bad name. Lastly, we come to message and the harm that can be done through the messages within a piece of art. Every parent has experienced sitting down with their kid to watch a movie that is ostensibly suitable for children, but is rife with programming that, while not technically inappropriate, can be harmful to children. Movies can be harmful to adults as well in this way. There is no age where we are above being susceptible to programming. It is important to remember, though, that just because something can be taken a certain way doesn't mean that it will be taken a certain way, or that it was intended to be taken a certain way. Should we pay attention to what we are watching and what it might be trying to make us think? Absolutely. But literal propaganda aside, artists are rarely ever trying to deliberately control your mind so much as they are just trying to tell a compelling story, and along the way of that are passing along mental germs they happen to be carriers for, unbeknownst to them. They might have received those germs from a studio exec's notes, or perhaps from just living life. Like actual germs, though, I do believe our bodies are stronger from being exposed to these mental germs than if we never encounter them whatsoever. Our values are made fitter and stronger by being challenged in small ways by contrasting ones, and conversely, made frail through lack of exposure to any opposing values at all. Children may of course need a bit more protection than adults, though, or a bit more healthy discussion about what they just watched, as their values are still being formed in the first place. In general, artists are pretty chill people, and not nearly the monsters they might seem like if you focus specifically on their artistic output. One of the kindest writers I've ever known in my life has written some of the most intensely unnerving horror stories ever written. One must always separate the art from the artist. Artists can also be quite hardworking and self-sacrificing, both admirable qualities, and their wants and desires often align quite strongly with the American dream, if not literally then at least in spirit. Sacrifice. As much as it is important to understand artists, it is equally important to understand the sacrifices they make. Surviving as an artist can be immensely difficult. Your choices are typically either abject poverty and the ability to give yourself 100% to your work, experience full creative freedom, but with no money or resources to put towards it. A day job that takes up most of your life, allowing you barely any time to hone your skills as an artist. Being lucky enough to be given an unfair contract that enslaves you to a corrupt industry, possibly making you rich but most often keeping you poor, with of course virtually no creative freedom. Artists are told that capitalism is the reason why things are like this, and so they often hate capitalism. It doesn't matter how many books or videos on what the free market actually is that you show them. It will all sound like BS to them because their experience dealing with anything to do with art and money colliding is so often horrible. What they absolutely don't need from the right is a lecture. They just need a path laid out for them that actually serves their needs as artists for once, and if the right can be who provides it, fantastic. Artists are drowning, and they don't care who throws them a life preserver, which is kind of how they got in bed with the left to begin with. The left has historically seemed vastly more sympathetic to artists than the right, but the left has provided no pathways to success for artists that make a lick of sense, and are way less sympathetic to artists nowadays than they once were. The time is perfect for the right to stop being the just get a job party and step in and save the day. Do something else and devote little to no time to your actual talent, and the entire reason you enjoy living is not a solution, and is no way to treat the people who create the beauty that surrounds us and the culture that enriches and uplifts us. Artists are responsible for so much of what makes life great, and they should be respected for it, especially since they don't ask for much beyond that. They aren't looking for handouts, they're just looking for what America is supposed to be all about providing: freedom and independence. The right should in turn match the sacrifice artists make by letting go a bit of their eternal chasing of profit, which has specifically gotten in the way of them holding any cultural power whatsoever. As an example, we've all seen bargain bins full of Z-grade Christian movies, made for and by straight-laced Christians and laughably bad to anyone outside of that target demographic. These movies are profitable, as they target a very specific niche that is more than happy to buy them, but they are not powerful in the least. Nobody outside of that niche cares about them as anything other than so bad it's good fare to laugh at. No liberal propaganda could ever make the right look as lame as those profitable films that Christians eat up do. The lesson here is that, though profit can be nice, when it comes to culture, power almost never comes from profit. All the most influential companies as far as culture either barely break even or are perpetually and deliberately in debt, such as Netflix, which is always nearly $10 billion in the red and which cranks out effective liberal propaganda constantly. The answer to that is not the right starting its own juggernaut equivalent to Netflix, which would be impossible, but instead adopting a mindset that to do great work is its own reward, and comes with it untold cultural benefits, and any profit on top of that is nice, but should not be the deciding factor in whether or not a great piece of art is created in the first place. This mindset is directly in line with how an artist naturally thinks, and your favorite and most memorable and influential art exists because of it. Freedom. Artists require freedom in order to create. It is their blank sheet of paper or canvas. Nowadays, it's popular to talk about artistic freedom in regards to speech, and being able to say whatever you want even if it might offend someone, but that is but one aspect of artistic freedom. Imagine if the only paper you had to write on was already written on, that it were impossible to create from a blank slate and that you always had to incorporate what had already been laid out for you. All artists who create within the system deal with this very problem, but it is not talked about, as to talk about it would call into question the entire industry of art itself, across all mediums. Art industries deserve to be questioned. The purpose of art industries are to dictate what art is and isn't, and what sort of art should be made available to the masses, and to use that art as a delivery system for messaging that those who control art industries want disseminated. Freedom does not factor in whatsoever. An artist that works within an industry is a hired propagandist, whether they realize it themselves or not. Every piece of industry art you consume, no matter what element of it might be enjoyable, is there to make you think something that it is advantageous for those in charge of the industry for you to think. It's not about profits. If it ever was, it hasn't been for a while, as virtually every industry has now realized that living in the red is the best way to live. It's all about messaging, because messaging is priceless. Artists are controlled in order to control the masses. When artists are free, it is way harder to control the masses. When artists think for themselves and create according to their own interests and standards instead of those dictated by higher-ups, the people think for themselves, and think in bigger, better, and more beautiful ways. So many artists who are not even working within an industry's system yet, who are still free and independent, neuter themselves creatively by only creating what they think will impress the industry and earn them the privilege of being absorbed into it and made into a vessel for their messaging. This means that even outside of the industry, we rarely see true creative freedom and expression. Virtually all art is affected negatively by the existence of art industries. If we are to save the artists and restore artistic freedom, we must destroy the art industries. And we can do so by making them obsolete through fostering true independence and ensuring a viable path for it. Independence. Independence is a word that, in regards to art, has been bastardized to the point that it has no literal definition anymore. The film industry, for example, manufactures both its mainstream programming and its counter-programming. If you choose to watch an independent movie instead of a major release, you are often supporting the exact same major studio. They've got you whatever you choose to do with your money and are in full control of the messaging within their alternative to the mainstream choices. True independent voices, beholden to no one, exist outside the system only, and luckily are growing in power. Truly independent filmmaking is a burgeoning movement that I am a large part of and care very deeply about. I literally wrote the book on it. It is filmmaking on as small a scale as possible, like a writer with pen and paper, or a painter with paints and canvas. For the vast majority of film history, this was not possible, which means that we are just now starting to understand what film even is yet. The first 100 years of film belonged to the gatekeepers. The next 100 years and beyond belong to the people. We truly independent filmmakers are actively rescuing independence and making it actually mean something again. What we may lack in funds, we have in talent, freedom, and spirit. We are deeply American in all that we do, and the right would love us if they knew we existed. I do not fault you for not knowing who I am or what truly independent film is, or maybe having never watched any. There is a near total media blackout on us and what we do. Take that as a sign of how powerful and game-changing we are, if only the people knew about us. You've heard plenty about YouTube and TikTok and the masses making their own content, but have you heard about artists making great feature-length films for $0? Of course not. That would be suicide for the establishment. Truly independent filmmaking needs a champion. The right could be that, encouraging what we are doing and ensuring we don't starve as we do it. The bang for one's buck is astronomical. Our budgets are so small that money goes light years further in our hands. Any truly independent filmmaker you see that has talent, you should support in some capacity. They are actively doing the groundbreaking work that will bring the industries crashing down. My truly independent film studio, Kill the Lion Films, accepts support at $2 per month. You can watch my other video talking about my studio to find out more, and you can watch the feature-length films I've made online and on DVD. This video you're watching right now is not a commercial for me though. I just happen to be doing the kind of artistic work that, with your help, can bring down the corrupt and horrible film industry. The right should encourage and support any and all truly independent creators, people who are doing their own thing and are happy to be doing it, not trying to get hired by an industry. That is the most exciting wave to be on currently, as it is the wave of the future. When we directly fund truly independent artists we believe in, no middleman, no industry, that is when we will get the best art, and that is when artists will no longer be pawns of politics and simply be artists. At that point, the culture war will have been won, as culture will be at peace again, able to be simply culture. Thank you for listening. I'm Cody Clarke, and if you like what I have to say, I will be saying a lot more like it on here, so be sure to like, share, comment, and subscribe. Hope to see you again soon.